Mr. Beat up. Mr. Beat Up.
I have the beat that describes that moment accurately.
So welcome to Mr. Beat Up. In this segment, we've got Simon here. Simon, welcome back.
Great to be here in the new studio.
Yes. Now, this segment is all about you bringing a stock to the table that has been beaten up, and more importantly, has probably been beaten up unfairly, or the market has overreacted.
I think that is the key word that we've been honing in on, overreaction.
Yeah.
Because what we've learned is that the market is a temperamental and moody teenager that any sign of bad news or hardship seems to massively overreact. And Mr. Beat Up here is our voice of reason. He is our sensible parent that sets things right and tells us when the market's overreacting and potentially there's some opportunity.
That's my job.
That's
what I'm here for.
And Simo, we've had some successes so far. Well, so far you've picked Tesla and Nike. Everyone can go and have a look at those episodes and performance since then. But today we've got a heavy hitter that's been facing some serious turbulence. Dum. But before we get into that, what are you actually looking for in a Mr. Beat Up candidate?
So just briefly, some of the key criteria is stocks down significantly from the all-time highs, ideally 30, 50% plus, negative media attention, leadership issues, strategy issues, making mistakes, missing their financial expectations. But crucially, as we alluded to at the start, the market's probably overreacted to the short term. Stock price doesn't accurately reflect the long-term potential.
Now, we've been inundated with requests since you first came on the show, Simo. In the Facebook discussion group, there's been chat, and our contact form, equitymates.com/contact, there's been a number of different requests. But I think we've got to say one company has really been overweight in terms of the requests.
Hi Equity Mates, I'm relatively new to investing and have been watching Boeing stock drop. I'd love to hear your thoughts on whether this is a long-term opportunity or if the market's right in punishing them. Can you cover it on Mr. Beat Up? Thanks.
Hey guys, love the podcast, long-time listener, first-time question asker. This is one for Mr. Beat Up. I've been seeing a lot of news about Boeing recently, and I was just wondering, what's your take? Is it a good time to buy?
So Boeing, yes, been a very rough ride. Down 40% year to date, 64% from its all-time highs.
Yeah, now I think a lot of people have probably seen the headlines about Boeing in the news, but let's give us the Cliff Notes version of what's happened.
Yeah, well, I knew it was bad because of the headlines, but actually doing this deep dive, it's quite shocking, really, what's been happening. Problems really began back in 2018, 2019. There was 2 deadly 737 crashes within the space of 5 months, killing hundreds of people tragically, and that led to the grounding of all the 737 planes. COVID hit in 2020, and Boeing's problems have just escalated even further since then. There's been multiple near disasters, parts falling off planes. Yeah. We've had whistleblowers raising safety concerns, and then 2 of them died under mysterious circumstances. They've actually recently...
That was crazy.
Yeah. A lot of these things you
forget
about.
2 whistleblowers died before
crazy.
giving testimony.
We could probably spend the whole episode diving into some of these things, but really, it's been so much going on. It's been really beaten up.
They pled guilty to misleading air safety regulators. More recently, the machinists or machinists. Yeah. 30,000 of them are on strike. Reports are that it's costing Boeing $50 million a day.
Incredible.
They've just stopped production of a couple of different lines of planes because they don't have the staff to do it. When we flew to Melbourne for our live show, the back fell off Simon's seat.
We've actually got some footage of that. Maybe we can get it into the YouTube video.
So, yeah.
things.
But
So it's all going wrong.
yeah, so stocks down 40% this year alone. So it kind of ticks that criteria of stocks down. It feels like for good reason. So the question then here is for you, Mr. Beat Up, is this an overreaction?
Look, I don't actually think this one is an overreaction from the market. This is some serious stuff, and the financials are actually pretty bleak. They haven't made a profit in 5 years. They've actually lost $33 billion since then.
Wow.
Their debt has skyrocketed. So I think for me here, the question here is it an overreaction? Probably the better question is, why would actually anyone look to buy Boeing stock, and does it have a good future ahead of it?
So is there light?
Well, I think there's two things we should cover here. Firstly, we'll just briefly look at what they're doing to sort out this mess. And then secondly, and most importantly, let's zoom out and look at the bigger long-term picture. So I'll start with the current issues. There has been a few notable things they've done. Just last month in August, they brought in a new CEO, third in 5 years.
Oh, no.
This guy, Cully Ortberg, he's an aerospace veteran. He's a mechanical engineer by trade. The previous management was criticized as being too corporate, too profit focused. They were actually based in Chicago.
Too profit focused, but lost $33 billion in the past 5 years. Yeah.
Too focused on the numbers, not focused enough on actually delivering planes efficiently and safely.
Core of the business.
Core of the business. Forgot the core. He's actually already relocated to Seattle, where they're actually produce and manufacture planes, where that all happens. So his appointment's been pretty well received. They've got the right guy in, it seems. He's been tasked to fix the culture and refocus on getting back to basics. But, you know, they've got thousands of suppliers, thousands of pieces go into these planes, thousands of employees. There's no quick fix here. But another good thing they've done, they've spent $8 billion acquiring Spirit Aerosystems. They make the fuselage parts of the planes, among other things. And this acquisition is part of their strategy now to try and get more control over production to improve safety and quality. And prior to the strike, some good progress was actually being made on production deliveries. They saw some good uptick in those numbers. And they actually have these shadow factories where all the job is to fix planes because of all these issues had. And they were actually talking about closing a couple of those. So things are starting to look better, but the big issue now is just sorting out these strikes. It's costing them a fortune. They need to swiftly resolve this and actually resume production delivery.
Yeah, at the time of recording, the machinists want a 40% pay rise. Boeing has said 30% pay rise is their best and final offer, but it's costing them $50 million a day.
Where do you draw
they've chosen
the line?
they've chosen a good time to strike.
100%.
High leverage time to strike.
100%.
So I think, Simo, they're all sort of short-term fixes. Like, you know, let's assume the strike gets sorted. Let's assume that they get through it. People would be thinking about Boeing more long-term. So how are you thinking about Boeing long-term?
For me, I think it can be simplified down to two things, really. The world needs Boeing, and the US definitely needs Boeing. So if I start on the world needs Boeing, it's, again, quite simple. They're part of a duopoly. The company, Boeing, is one of the world's 2 manufacturers of large commercial jets. And despite all the headlines, companies are still buying from them. It's either them or Airbus. And there's ridiculous barriers to entry to this industry. So there's nowhere to go. It's Airbus or Boeing.
Yeah. I'd love to see like a Lockheed or something just be like,
Watch this.
Yeah. we can make FA-18s, or F-35s these days. We can probably do a.
But there is the Chinese competitor floating around, Comac.
Oh, yeah. You're a big fan.
Ever heard of them?
Yeah, so there's a company, Comac. They're trying to get in the game. It's still pretty early days, though. They only delivered 2 planes last year.
Okay. Yeah.
Their goal is to expand production annually to 100 a year by 2030, but even that is seen as quite ambitious. So I think people are thinking they might capture some domestic demand in China, but less likely elsewhere, at least in the next 5 to 10 years.
I also just think that is a total number. We were speaking to someone the other day at an airlines, and they were saying Boeing was meant to pump out over 2,500 in the last 2 years, and Chinese are coming in.
No, well, yeah. But, like, for example, Boeing's in the past quarter delivered 83 commercial planes.
In a quarter.
Yeah.
Which is well below what they should be.
Yeah. But it's not like, we laugh at 2, but it's not like anyone's producing, like, thousands of planes a quarter.
but they should be.
Not a quarter.
No, not a
Yeah,
quarter. A year.
Yeah,
I reckon they
I
should
think
be
hundreds a
up-
year.
Close to 1,000.
Okay. All right. Well, let's go. Before the issue started, let's go. Boeing plane deliveries 2017, 763
Close to
in
1,000,
2017.
yeah.
Yeah. Hundreds, close to 1,000. We're both right. Anyway, Simon, this is your segment.
Yeah. So small,
tiny.
small fry at the moment. It's Airbus or Boeing. So
It's also just like which major airline is buying Comac planes?
Yeah.
And going to their shareholders and going to their customers and saying, we feel comfortable with this decision.
it's just
Yeah.
Chinese
Yeah.
airlines.
Yeah.
That's-
It's not like
that's-
Qantas
yeah.
is like, oh, we can save $1 here.
No,
Yeah.
exactly.
I also can't see the US being like, yeah, sure, guys.
Yeah. Delta, you can buy
Go and buy
Comac.
US.
Not
Yeah,
gonna happen.
Not going to
Not
happen.
going to happen. So
Which leads you to your second point. The US needs Boeing.
exactly, Boeing has been a key partner of the US government for pretty much its whole 100+ year history. Actually dates back to the start of the First World War, and throughout the years, the US government has worked really close with Boeing to help create jobs, grow the air passenger industry, grow US exports, and of course, to work with the US in their military planes and aircraft. To put some numbers to it, last year, 2023, Boeing was the 5th largest defense contractor for the US and earned $33 billion just from the US government. And in the US, they employ over 150,000 people. So vital contribution to the US defense, vital to the US economy. And many people just think this strong link makes it too big to fail company. It goes into that bucket. And for Boeing itself, actually having 30 to 40% of its revenue come from the US government, that actually gives it quite a bit of stability. Even when the commercial issues it's having at the moment, it's still got 30, 40% of its revenue locked in with the US Defense Force.
So that's an argument that the US wouldn't let it fail. And I think one thing that we haven't spoken about yet that sort of supports the duopoly is just all these aircraft manufacturers have massive order backlogs whilst there's like a growing demand for planes in general.
Yeah, exactly. This blew my mind as well, actually, looking at this. So Boeing apparently has a backlog of around 6,000 planes, and that's valued at $500 billion worth of business.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
business they've got contracted that they need to fulfill.
And I think if you do that maths based on that 2017, 750 odd planes delivered, that's what, like 9 years worth of work,
Call
right
it a
there.
decade's
Yeah.
worth of work. And they've also got $60 billion from the US government locked in defense contracts. So they've got huge revenue, which gives them, years of production ahead. And it's not just the backlog either. The industry itself's in a pretty strong position. So Boeing and Airbus both have similar projections. They've said that the world will probably need around 42 to 44,000 new planes in the next 20 years or so. And this is driven mainly by regions like Southeast Asia. They're set to triple their fleets in the next 20 years. Air cargo is meant to increase by 2/3 over the next 20 years. And interestingly, that it's estimated that 70% of the aircraft around today are going to need to be replaced to meet global sustainability goals, be more efficient, basically. So world needs more planes. Where are they going to get it from? Airbus,
Comac.
Boeing. That's it.
It's a pretty interesting one. I think, as you said at the top, like it's not quite your classic Mr. Beat Up where we've seen like this intense short overreaction to one piece of news that's pumped to stock 40%. This has been a drop since the start of the year, progressively. News headline on news headline on news headline, down somewhat 40%. Feel definitely justified, but there's so many, I guess, tailwinds, pun intended here, that that it's just one of it could be one of those classic Buffett, even though he hates airlines, that sort of when everyone's absolutely running for the hills, they can often provide some good investment opportunities. And I'm not saying now's the time to do that, but like with everything that's in front of them, if they can get it right and this CEO can actually sort out production line, take control of what's important in the business, get back on top of their pipeline of work.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting.
Yeah. I think, like to pour some cold water on all of this, like I completely agree with everything you guys are saying, but my question would be like, once it normalizes, like what's the level of expected
Upside.
growth that
Yeah.
because it's like, it's pretty steady, and like when they're not, having safety issues and stuff like that, like they'll produce a pretty predictable number of planes and produce a pretty predictable amount of revenue and profit from that. And it's not gonna like 10 bag in 5 years or something like that.
The one thing I would be watching is that pipeline. Like if old mate who's just come in, can't remember his name's Kerry or whatever it was.
Kelly.
If Kelly, if he can exceed expectations on delivery, then away you go.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Nice.
look, I like it. It's certainly beat up. Let's see what happens.
Yes. If you have a stock that you'd like Mr. Beat Up to have a look at, go under the microscope, give his views, then make sure you head to the Facebook discussion group, and we certainly collect all of those that come through. And Simon, when you're next on, there's plenty to go through. So really appreciate you coming on and sharing your thoughts on Boeing.
Great to be here.
I will say this about investing. Everything you do learn is cumulative. What I learned at 20 is useful.